Malcolm Hoenlein is with us live via telephone. We call this the Weekly Update, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM and the AM.
Thank you. Always good to be with you.
Well, the big question. I turn to you and ask on behalf of I don't know how many thousands of people, is the war over? What's the answer to that, Malcolm?
I do not believe the war is over. We may be in a phase, but it's always been inconsistent and unpredictable given the people involved, given the nature of the threat. But Iran, still has the 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. It doesn't mean that they're on the verge of a nuclear weapon, but it's we know that they have the deep underground facilities still, some of it in rubble, but many of that enough intact, both at Natanz and at Isfahan. And a lot of the capacity remains, and they would be able to rebuild. We see the challenges that they're posing in the Straits of Hormuz. I think that the president is a negotiator and certainly does not have a deal yet, but we don't know what is a bargaining tactic, what is a change in policy. We see that there's no authorized Iranian agreement to the U.S. proposal, supposedly the one-pager, which is really a precursor to the real negotiations, which would be a more detailed implementation program. So the U.S. proposal could help Iran relieve some of the economic distress and prevent what they fear most, which is strikes on their oil, gas facilities, and possibly the transportation and other infrastructure, domestic infrastructure. If they reject the U.S. proposal, and I think that the rationale for escalating, as we saw yesterday, but the president says it was just a sort of a fluff move. It was to dismiss the significance. I think it's more significant that they fired on the UAE again and against American ships, and we responded in a pretty tough way, but not decisive. So we're I think in this middle phase. People can interpret it any way they want, and they are. What's important is how do the people in Iran interpret it? Do they see it as as U.S. backing off, and again not coming with coup de grace that will actually enable them perhaps to change the situation there? The White House has not opened the Straits of Hormuz to Iranian ships. They've held the seas on the straits in place. So and they can resume the bombing instantly. We have the tremendous presence. We saw yesterday the air tankers and American planes flying over the straits and activated. So we will have to see. One of the things that concerns me is that the USS Ford, the largest aircraft carrier of the three that's there, the most modern, is due to return to the United States in the next days, and it's been out a record period of time. So this is really a transitional stage. And Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and others making a request of the president and him responding to it in this way also has implications about the shifts in the region, the tension between Saudi Arabia and UAE, obviously very serious. All sorts of other conflicts springing up between Sudan, Ethiopia, Egypt, one against the other, and Turkey, I think, taking advantage of it.
The president of the United States described this week's strikes against Iranian military facilities as a love tap, quote unquote, and insists that the ceasefire is holding. Now, I asked you if the war is over yet, and we got your answer, and certainly a good analysis. But what about an analysis about whether the ceasefire is still holding? What do you think?
I think the ceasefire is by and large holding. remember, Iran is focusing on a lot of things. The financial situation is disastrous, and they have a lot of money which they want from the United States, which we're holding, and the closure of the straits affects them even more, I think, than most other parties. But we have hundreds and hundreds of ships that are stuck. The impact on everything from fertilizer to helium to obviously gas is impacting countries everywhere, many of our allies. So the pressure builds. But when I see the Saudis pressuring to halt the Hormuz mission, I have to question what's the rationale. And we know that MBS spoke to the president, didn't resolve the issues, but and you had the suspension that they imposed on the U.S. military's use of the facilities, which has been lifted supposedly now. So and remember, each country has its own agendas.
Right, and you've always told us that Saudi Arabia has this desire to always keep the impression that they're running the Middle East, right?
They want to run the Middle East, yes, and to be the dominant influence.
Right.
That's why they don't like challenges like the UAE or others. But they are also more and more in link with Pakistan, which also gives them a nuclear umbrella, and. So all of these relationships, it's so complex. But the one thing is that there has to be clarity. There has to be a message to the people of Iran. There has to be a message, especially to the regime, that we're not going to keep playing games and have them take another step. I think that's why they kept the siege on the straits in place, knowing that if that was lifted, number one, Iran would immediately benefit in the financial benefits, but also the messages that sends.
There are those pundits that are suggesting that the president has a self-imposed deadline, that he must get this all done before he leaves for Beijing. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'm sure that has an impact. I don't think it's an absolute deadline. The Chinese are clearly on the side of Iran, still buying their oil, still facilitating the same things, the policies, pursuing these policies and facilitating assistance. They're still, by the way, very active here. We shouldn't forget that. And I hope that the president will somehow bring it up, that they are leading sponsors of activities on campuses against Israel Jews through Roy Singham, this a billionaire in Hong Kong, who I talked about at least 2 years ago or a year and a half ago when we first found evidence, when NCRI uncovered the pattern of funding coming from the CCP, which seeks to undermine American society, and found the riots on campuses a vehicle to do that. And they have not taken as active a role as some thought they might, Russia and China, in defending Iran. They don't want to get involved in the conflict, but they were caught trying to smuggle more weapons, sending planes, sending ships with weapons to Iran. It's clearly a major investment. They buy 90% of the oil that Iran puts out, and so this is for them also a loss as long as this sustains. But I don't think, and I hope that the president does not see this as a deadline, that he has to get things done or out of the way. He wants the visit, obviously, to be a success, and the president puts a lot of value on the visibilities and the productions when he goes abroad, and the messages that he can communicate. But the stakes here are very high, and we have not seen Chinese cooperation per se in diminishing it. Look at their votes in the UN, look at the positions that they take on almost every issue.
Meanwhile, a lot of things going on in Iran. One of the disturbing things is that there were more hangings this week of people being accused of working for Israel. Are these witch hunts? Is there evidence? Is there anybody in the international community who's monitoring these executions that are going on?
So your question is well put, because it's not just the fact that there are record numbers of executions going on almost every day with no reaction of the world. People being accused of spying for Israel, by the way, not Jews. The last two, one was a Kurd, one was from another minority group. These are clearly a witch hunt, and this is them trying to explain why they couldn't stop the murders and the successful assassinations or eliminations of key leaders. So they say this is outside interference. They're saying the economic situation is because of Jews on the outside who have infiltrated Iran. I mean, this constant scapegoating of Jews of Israel and linking other minorities and going after them. The executions of minorities and people who participated in demonstrations are continuing, and the world is silent in the face of this. They get elected to the commissions to deal with non-proliferation and with rights at the UN. It's like such a bizarro world that we're living in. But the internal situation, and especially because communications are down, internet is down, we don't even know all the facts. We see some of the announcements, but that's only the tip of the iceberg of what's really happening in the country.
As time goes on in this country, we better get more and more familiar with that term of scapegoating. We'll talk more about that coming up. Not that it's a laughing matter, but it's really disturbing. Finally, just to wrap up this one first segment on Iran, the memo of understanding, right? What you alluded to in the first part about this agreement that might actually happen to end the war permanently. It includes, the halting of enrichment of uranium. You address that. If this memo existed and included that a month ago, because we saw the way they reacted a month ago to all these proposals, there's no way in the world the Iranians would agree to it. Is it any more likely today?
No. Huh. I think that they're playing games. I think that that they will negotiate because buying time, they know that resistance in the United States will grow. We see that, the reports now that many U.S. targets were hit and were damaged during the war, which we do not know, those located in many of the Gulf states. And it's something I guess we will find out later. They know that the longer that they can drag this out, the more tensions that will be created, that the economic pressures, the price thing, and they are playing towards they know this, the calendar for the political elections as well.
Right.
And anybody who thinks that, they don't monitor that and don't judge by the domestic opposition and hearing what members of Congress and others are saying, And they could easily reach an agreement. They can walk away saying, "Look, we beat them. We survived. Sure, they eliminated a couple levels of our leadership, but the same leadership track will be in control." And and so they look at the overall situation and have tremendous pride. There's also the breakdown of communications inside Iran. They don't have the ability to communicate freely. We believe IRGC is running the show, but you see sometimes the differences between what the foreign minister says and then the next minister says, and they take a harder line, a softer line. It's a domestic play. It's a play for succession, which is in the minds of a lot of the people about who will be the rulers in even if Moshdaba is alive and is in some position. He's not a strong figure. He's going to be reliant on who controls the IRGC, who controls the Basij. These are all factors, and it's all moving targets right now. So, and we've seen really almost no progress on the part of Iran towards restoring into implementing a meaningful change and progress. At the same time, they haven't really been able to restore the nuclear program, which was devastated. They're doing some. They're digging in the rubble. They are uncovering the hidden stuff. They're also digging deeper underground, and they learned the lesson in the next The next installations are going to be deep inside mountains and deep underground because they were able to protect those from some of the attacks. And, now with drone warfare, with all the changes that are taking place. And at the same time, people are not focusing on what Turkey is doing and the changes in the region. And so Hamas is being trained by Turkey. And by the way, Turkey learned from Hamas, too, about some of the methodologies and methods. So they unveiled yesterday a 6,000-kilometer intercontinental ballistic missile, Turkey. And again, it gets no attention because everybody's focused on these other things. So we have to look at the entire region and see the dangers, and that Turkey is extending its influence, aided and abetted by people that, even some from the United States, that really would be of great concern normally, right. And we pay no attention. Who knows what Sharat is doing today, both internally and beyond the border? And as I said, so many other conflicts that are brewing, all of which give opportunities to places like China and to others. And Turkey, by the way, is involved in Africa. So was Iran, but Iran right now is. Their resources are depleted.
Price of gas average per gallon at the very beginning of COVID during Trump 1, $1.95. I can't believe I looked this up. It was under $2. It was $1.95. And now, of course, I think yesterday I paid $4.59. So, as the midterms approach, this is going to be a real concern because if it's all about the economy, there's nothing that the average American thinks is going well in that area right now.
Well, the president obviously has that as a major concern. We want to see Congress, although he did have some victories in terms of the Republican primaries in the last few days. But obviously this looms, but he has a lot of time to make it up. Even if in June, we're going to beginning of July, it's still enough time.
Yeah, but restarting the war may not help him fix it.
Right, but
that's the point. Right?
If they see that Iran is acting in a provocative way, attacking our allies and attacking our ships, as they did yesterday, that causes belli. We should have done much more. But as the president, as you correctly quoted, I think called it love tap, whatever, fluff or some dismissive word, I can't believe that he will allow the things to stand the way they are and to emerge out of this with the Iranian regime able to declare a victory in their own terms. Obviously, they had to be held to account to the people, and we still hope that post-conflict, the people will rise up and know the price they paid and see the devastation and what was wrought by virtue of this war and the leadership that doesn't care about its people. The economic conditions worsen all the time when the currency is, goes over 1,800,000. And I remember talking to you when it was 40,000 and 30,000, and we would talk about how bad it was then. Now think about it, and there are food problems. There are other problems in the country for people, though they seem to sustain largely. Remember, a country of 100 million people, it's huge and geographically huge. And so hopefully some of the minorities who make up more than 50% of the population will join, will give expression to opposition to the regime and help bring about change.
It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio around the world at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, on the beloved NSN app. Malcolm Hoenlein's with us. We call this the Weekly Update, Friday, starting at about 7:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, one of the most, if not the most, in my opinion, you can tell me if you agree, one of the most important projects that American Jewish leadership has in the immediate future, Malcolm, and that is what the New York Times describes as follows. The war in Iran has added to a tectonic shift in public opinion, a bipartisan swing away from Israel. Now, we could sit and discuss and debate how big, this is now my words, not the Times, how severe the swing is for both parties. But do you agree that when it comes to American Jewish leadership at this point, this is one of the most important things that must be dealt with?
You mean this shift in support towards Israel amongst elected officials, amongst the population?
Well, the Times is claiming that there's a bipartisan swing away from Israel. We always talk about the bipartisan support for Israel, and you always tell us how important it is and that maintained itself even in the most challenging of times. This is now a new thing, a bipartisan swing away from Israel. And I would think that if they're accurate, if this is right, then American Jewish leadership's got to step up. This got to be repaired. Is it reparable?
Yes, I believe that it's over time reparable. I think that we have to understand how much of this is manipulated as we learn to understand the degree to which they have infiltrated our systems and public opinion, and the use of AI is only going to magnify that even more. First of all, I still think the majority of Congress supports Israel. You know, they have focused on Netanyahu and all of those who joined that bandwagon. I'm just saying that's just an excuse that they know they can't say they hate Israel, but they can say they can hate Netanyahu and everybody accepts it. But what they're really fighting is Israel's right to defend itself, Israel's resistance. And Democrats look at the fact that they're working closely with the president, whom they hate, and then if as in the reverse situation could be true, but this is a time of war where they should be standing up clearly. After October 7th, we saw how quickly things changed, and the fact that, you know, senators could vote to cut military aid, not economic aid, military aid to Israel during a war. Thank God that the administration continued the arms supply. Think if Israel supply was depleted and with 18,000 hits, you can't stockpile enough. And I think 65 plane loads of equipment have landed in Israel. And when you ask people and you press them, even members of Congress, who say, well, no, we're not against Israel and we're not against this, we're not against that. But it is part of the change, the larger change, which began before the war. You know, we've been talking about this for years, about the shifting alliances and how young people have been poisoned, not because of knowledge, not because of rational conclusions, but because these outrageous, you know, the influence of Qatar pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into our campuses, China doing it, others doing it. They have professors. Look at all the graduation speakers who have to be knocked out because they're so blatantly hostile, and those who get through and make statements against in support of Hamas and how many October 7th outrageous comments that we hear. And unfortunately, we even have Jews and good Jews who get on the radio and start attacking other Jews instead of and use these false figures of how many voted for Mandani and what's going on. We're not. There's no coherent approach, which is essential, and it's what you're asking. Really, bottom line is, we have to do much more to approach this in intelligent ways, use analysts. There are a lot of people who want to help. I'm speaking to many. There are many good projects going on, and they need more support, but really grassroots efforts to take advantage of AI, efforts to use modern technology to make Israel's case, and I do believe that they are making somewhat of a difference. Just look at what's happening in Great Britain, where they say that 20 Iran-linked terror plots were foiled in Britain over the past year. You don't think that's happening here, that Iran doesn't have influence? And we warned about it for 10 years at least, Nachum, that they have infrastructure here. So do others, and the Chinese funding. So there's a manipulation, but there's also a play on the ignorance. When you press young people about these questions, and the responses are so ludicrous. They don't know anything. They don't know where Palestine is. They don't know what it means globalizing the Intifada. Some do. Some of the manipulators do. But the bulk of those people are just useful idiots who fall in line. And too often Jews fall into the trap of magnifying it or of aiding and abetting the opposition unwittingly. But we have to be much more careful in what we say and how we say it. We have to organize and make sure that people turn out to vote and do voter registration now. That's still one of the most important platforms we have, that people have to be willing to write and make their voices heard. And when public officials say the things they do against Israel, against Jews, that if they know they can do it with impunity, they will continue to do it. So the answer is it's really a serious moment in that regard. Nobody can really put together. I saw reports again coming out, and they give some statistical analysis, but I believe those numbers are so understated. They're not really reflective of the severity and intensity of the challenges that we face. And what I see every single day, literally every day, it is too much to even accept and to believe that this is what's happening in America. So watch what happens in Great Britain. I've said this for 20 years, and I'm telling you again, BDS, we saw all of the things. What happens in Great Britain is happening here. It takes a little bit more time, perhaps, to develop, but it's the foreign infiltration, the physical challenges, the security challenges that go on every single day. The number of incidents every day is shocking. And what's happening in schools where the unions are backing anti-Semitic incidents, and Jewish teachers are finding it intolerable, Jewish students finding it intolerable, that you find it in public officials and public meetings. Every platform and forum is being taken advantage of, and it's a systematic approach. It's not haphazard. So we have to train young people to get involved in the political process, to run for office, to make the sacrifice, perhaps, to be in public service and to serve the community, serve in government and in other channels where you rise through the ranks. I believe, though, that it's not a lost cause. I believe that there is still a reservoir of goodwill. We have to do more to build alliances and build and promote those spokespeople who say the right things. And it's not coming from us; it has to come from them. And I believe that we can still hold on. But anybody who doesn't raise red flags about the future here is making a mistake.
I have to note, and I especially say this to those who are regular listeners and hear these conversations on a weekly basis. A new listener, I wouldn't expect to know this, but every time, I'm not saying this in an accusatory tone, just the opposite. I'm saying this lauding the observation. Every time we talk about a domestic issue, especially one like this, support of Israel in Washington, support of Israel among the two parties, etc., it always leads to you speaking about voter registration and voting in general. And it is the one thing we have that many other Jewish communities around the world did not have in the past. It's the one thing we have to actually make a difference. And it's amazing to me. Obviously, in the type of house I grew up in, I knew this, but it's amazing to me how many people don't know this, that their simple right to vote and their act of voting can make such a difference and really can alleviate the question that I started this segment with. So it's unbelievable that every time I bring up a domestic issue, especially when it comes to what's happening in Washington, and especially as it comes to the influence that certain people are having, every time I bring it up, you always end up at voter registration. And again, I'm not...
Because it's a fundamental step that people can do when they say, what do I do?
And it's amazing how many people don't do it. It's amazing.
It's still amazing, and thank God we did make progress, and the efforts on the local levels that we have talked about. But it's only one step. It's also a question of writing, and there are websites that can direct you. They do the letter. All you have to do is sign your name and send it, so that. And we've seen many reversals in the last 2 weeks. I've seen dozens of reversals or rejections of anti-Israel initiatives across the country, in sometimes in remote places where they voted down, I think, because the people wrote, people made their voices heard, and because I do believe that there is a reservoir. We have the Council for Secure America, which I had the privilege of helping to start 40 years ago, but now we had events in Washington last week. 30 people from North Dakota came. The best people in the world, including their senators and others, from South Dakota, from Iowa, from Idaho, from Montana, from Alaska. These states, nobody goes there. Nobody talks to them. And they're pro-Israel. The people are fundamentally pro-Israel. The heart of America, I think, remains largely pro-Israel. You don't hear their voices, and if we neglect them, they will continue. The situations there will deteriorate as well, because they're energy rich in many of these places, and they are, but they are fundamentally so supportive. Senator Kramer's comments at the Israeli embassy were amazing. The chairman of the Energy Committee, who comes from Kentucky, many others. So as bleak as the situation can look, and especially in a city like New York, and where people can get away with the things that are going on campuses continuously across the country, and the fact that some donors are getting involved makes a big difference. That the people who give the money to the universities, their voices make a difference. There are so many avenues of things that could be done. And when NORPAC goes to the Hill, or when other people just invite their Congress people to the synagogue, even if it's somebody we disagree with on things, but bring them and develop personal relationships so that you can call them up and say, listen, this is a vote that really counts, and we need you to be on the right side of it. Yeah. And again, the fundamental thing is education. That's why, to me, voter registration is an educational means of reaching people and empowering them and making them feel efficacious. But how many of our kids know anything about the issues we talk about here? How many of them can tell you, the Straits of Hormuz? We joke about when others don't know what river and what sea. I don't know how many of our kids know what river and what sea. And the same way that we mobilized for Soviet Jewry and for Syrian Jewry and others, and we won. We overcame overwhelming odds. We could overcome these odds as well. But it has to be a whole change in the mindset, and the rabbinic leadership, the community leadership, the institutions, educational institutions. It has to be a revolution now. We are facing really tremendous challenges. And Nachum, if I did it, I know people always say it's depressing sometimes when I raise these issues. This is life. This is what they have to know if you're going to counter it. And we don't tell you, believe me, even a fraction of it.
Well said. We talk about Israel's security, and we always wonder about the statistics. More of the rockets and missiles seem to get through in the most recent activity than in prior ones. And then we read about, you actually sent me this news item that there's a lack of you sent me the Iron Beam, that there are no batteries for the Iron Beam, and there's also, we learned this week, a lack of Arrow 3 interceptor missiles. Is that the reason why those stats are worse than they were, because we simply don't have the same defense mechanisms that are working well like we used to?
No, I sent you that because you had asked me, and right. I had asked the question, but why Iron Beam wasn't more evident, and we got the answer.
No batteries.
So we didn't have it before, so we don't have it now, although there have been a lot of ballyhoo that this was, that the laser was going to be the answer, especially in the north. Right. And with increasing use of drones, and these drones are very hard to take down. When people ask me, so why don't they just shoot them? Because these are fiber optic guided drones that carry pretty heavy payloads and are very hard to eliminate. So I think that when you have overwhelming numbers of attacks, we know that we can't take it all down. We know that there was a shortage in the number of interceptors. Some of it has been replaced, some that isn't, and so you have to they have to husband it when it comes to responding. I know people are critical that we gave the UAE some of the interceptors and a launcher. I think that was a smart move.
Yeah,
I think
there was
in the
no
long
choice.
term it will have very strong payoffs, and I think that, whatever we do to build alliances and that kind, it's going to be important.
Are you surprised that Jonathan Pollard wants to run for the Knesset?
He's done it before. I don't know why people are surprised by it. He announced it a couple of years ago, and he's announcing it again. I don't think it helps us now in the middle of all that we're going through just to rehash all of that situation. But he's an Israeli citizen, and like everybody else, they all can run for office. Most of them do, and the voters will choose.
Yeah, I have more to say about this.
The problem is that it gave the media here a chance to rehash that whole episode, which I think a lot of people were happy we put behind us, and he was living a good life and has a new family in Israel, but. Each of these things that evokes, and we saw some very embarrassing things with some IDF soldiers and with other things, all of which, erodes and detracts. And there has to be far greater scrutiny and willingness on the part of the police, the government, to enforce the law in every sector to prevent the kind of stories that we see emerging. And yet, you see that no matter what, Israel doesn't have a chance. How the BBC and others, every time they apologize, about their reporting, yet they do it again and again. And look on Lebanon, reporting the number of killed, which they've done 1,000 times the same 300 number, without saying that 260 were terrorists. They don't acknowledge that Israel hit one place in Beirut. They didn't re-attack Beirut. They didn't break the ceasefire. They attacked because they took out the head of the Radwan. There was a targeted elimination of a terrorist leader who had been planning attacks on Israel. No country in the world is required to allow people who are organizing to carry out terrorist attacks to do so and not to respond, even if it's cross-border. And by and large, they have kept their activities within the confines of the area that they were supposed to. And yet, that is not the image that people have, that they are again taking on. You see that they try to bait Lebanese, many of whom say pro-Israel things or say that they want to see peace with Israel, and yet they keep forcing them to say, well, isn't it terrible that they did this? Isn't it terrible? We don't want to see a war. Israel doesn't want the war with Lebanon. Israel had peace with Lebanon and would have it again. And the Lebanese are the ones, they hate Hezbollah. They want to see them disarmed. And yet the international community has not achieved that.
100%. By the way, a note about next week, folks, because people have asked. We are going to do a weekly update next week on the assumption that Malcolm's available. It is Yom Yerushalayim, so we are going to try to keep things tight because there's going to be a lot of stuff we got to get to once a weekly update, and Rabbi Yudin have finished the segments. So, yes, Yom Yerushalayim next Friday, 59 years. We're actually giving Kiddush Shabbos in that honor. And it's a mazel tov to the city of Jerusalem and to Jews around the world. And again, we will have a Yom Yerushalayim special, but we will include the weekly update. And again, we'll try to keep things tight because there are segments we need to get to, including Mayor Weingarten of blessed memory with the sounds of 1967, which we hope to do in the final half hour of JM the AM next Friday. Finally, Malcolm, do you agree with the Jerusalem Post that Bennett, Eisenkot, and Lieberman equals 61?
I saw late last night or during the night another poll that shows that BB's at 65.
With who? The Arab parties?
No, it's a later poll, but so we've had the traditional joke over decades that Israelis are famous for telling the truth to pollsters and then lying at the polls.
Right.
So that these are. It's too early to predict. It's too early to see what happens. You saw that when Bennett goes with Lapid, his numbers drop. Eisenkot's numbers go up. When Eisenkot then is faced against others, the numbers go down and then they go up. So right now, it's very much in flux. Is there Bibi fatigue? I think that there are elements of it. Is he an easy target? Yes. Would the international community want him out? And I've had people argue with me even this week saying to me, you don't understand in the Congress, it's not, they're against Israel, they're against Netanyahu. And I told them it's not, it goes Netanyahu as the prime minister or somebody else as the prime minister to be against them right now. This is more fundamental. I am not saying that they handle every situation well. I've had a lot of problems with some of the public declarations and have raised it for years, and the care with which we speak, but you cannot deny the relationship he's had with the administration and with the experience that he has, the fact that he's a very smart and committed leader, and only have to look at the shekel at 2.90 to the dollar and say how this economy is so resounding in this, given despite all the challenges, but that the shekel is a lot stronger than the dollar is ridiculous. But it says something.
Yeah.
So and a lot of the credit for the economic improvements at the time were from Netanyahu when he was finance minister and the things he put into place, and the resilience of the Israeli people. And you got to say, when you see guys with both legs shot off going back to the field and volunteering and doing stuff that they, even in their limited capacity, it should inspire all of us. So little is asked of us. Don't take it for granted. And especially when it comes to Yerushalayim, we all love it. We will celebrate it next week, but don't take it for granted. A lot of people have designs on it. A lot of people don't want to see us in control of it. It affects, some fundamental religious beliefs and political beliefs on the parts of others. Don't take it for granted. Everybody plan trips to go to Israel as soon as it's possible. And we have to rebuild the tourism, so it's not just voter registration. There are so many things that we can do, but make your voice heard. I know that there's a rally in Queens on Sunday. People should get behind it and be part of it. Make your voices heard. Numbers count in these instances.
Thank you very, very much. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll speak, please God, next week.
God willing, be well. Have a good Shabbos.
Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations, weekly update Friday, 7:40 a.m. Eastern Time here at JM the AM. Next week, Yom Yerushalayim, we will do a weekly update, please God. We'll try to keep things tight because we do have a big 8 o'clock hour, including the Sounds of 1967 as presented many, many times on these airways by the late, great Mayor Weingarten. We will do that to celebrate 59 years of the reunification of Jerusalem.